Hi everyone, it's Roger here from What's on DisneyPlus.com. A quick news update for you guys on the future of Doctor Who with Disney Plus. But before we go any further, make sure you do hit that subscribe button to keep up with the latest Disney Plus news. So it's way back in 2022 that Disney announced it made a deal with the BBC to bring Doctor Who to Disney Plus around the world. However, the show would still remain exclusive to the BBC here in the UK. Now, as part of the deal, there was 2 seasons that were ordered. They also had a number of specials, including 60th anniversary and Christmas specials. Now, Doctor Who is an iconic series. It's been running for over 60 years. It has gone through many different phases and different creators, but also different actors. It's one of the very unique ways of having a British show which can keep regenerating. Literally, is kind of one of those shows that can just continue to run because kind of built into it is an instant way to be able to replace the main actor when they want to leave, because they just regenerate and this Time Lord then becomes somebody else with a whole new mannerisms and a whole new fresh take. And so with that, that's been why there's been like 15 plus people play the role of the Doctor over those 60 years. And with that, every time a new Doctor comes in, there's always that big question of when are they going and when's the next one coming in. The Doctor has always regenerated, it's come back. The show has been cancelled in the past and it's come back. It's been cancelled, it's come back. So this is a show which is very much kind of dear to British hearts and is one of the major franchises owned by the BBC. Now, this deal with Disney has been a little bit of an interesting one. Now, first off, the introduction of Disney into the deal did mean that the show got an influx of cash, and the later seasons have looked amazing. The special effects in there are far superior than what we saw before, and generally, that's been pretty good. However, it's definitely, I would say that the release on Disney Plus globally hasn't been a bigger hit as I was hoping it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a way of taking Doctor Who to the next level. That didn't happen. I personally don't think Disney really put all their heart into promoting it. I'm very light on what they were doing. You know, a couple of special presentations that kind of like, I think like Ncuti Gatwa went to like Disneyland once. And there was a few photos and stuff and a few posters I think up in like on the tube, in like New York and stuff. But generally, compared to the bigger shows, it hasn't happened. Now, obviously, with a TV series, it does have a much lower budget than a movie. This is also a sort of a co-production, so therefore Disney's not fully invested in wanting to advertise it too much because, again, they don't own it. And I think this is the big problem with it, is this deal was signed during the Bob Chapek era, where they were trying to get as much content on Disney Plus as possible for as cheaply as they want. Doctor Who is much cheaper to make than Marvel or Star Wars, and BBC are picking up most of the costs, therefore Disney aren't putting as much an investment. And I think this is a deal that as pretty much was very unlikely to continue once Bob Iger returned as CEO. It was like, I could see Bob just looking at it going, this is a franchise that we do not own. Why are we promoting it? We can't make any money on merchandise or anything like that. And it's not a big enough hit that it works. For example, like Bluey and Dancing with the Stars are shows that they make and they kind of work with the BBC on. But those shows are so popular that they, it counterbalances that. Doctor Who doesn't seem to be doing that. It's never once hit the Nielsen streaming chart. It rarely ever hits the actual general trending chart in Disney Plus, and it just doesn't seem to have been doing so well. Here in the UK, ratings wise, it's not bad, it's not dreadful. It's one of the most watched shows on the BBC each week. However, the linear viewership has declined, but the counter argument to that, and we have to say it, linear television viewership here in the UK is still drastically down. I mean, it's still pulling in, I think it's like 4+ million viewers each week, but it's drastically down on what it used to be back in its heyday. But then every show is Coronation Street, X Factor, all those kind of shows. They're all having much fewer viewers than they were a decade or two ago because there's more choice. So I do want to put that in there. But here in the UK, it is still very much, it's still a popular show. It does feel with the second season that there doesn't seem to be as much excitement around it. But also, more importantly, there doesn't seem to be as much outrage about it. Now, I think this second season, which started back in April, and we're only now going into, essentially the season finale is at the end of the month. We had this big Eurovision Song Contest episode this past weekend, which was a lot of fun, especially with it being Eurovision Song Contest anyway, and Rylan being in there. Great, I enjoyed that. But we're kind of at a point where this season, I think, has been a vast improvement. I really have enjoyed all of the episodes much more. It's been a very solid series. They seem to have taken some of the criticism from the first season and adapted it for the second one. It feels stronger. And as such, there doesn't seem to be as much complaining about it. We haven't had those awful episodes. And the sort of the messaging feels a little bit more toned down. It's still there. But if you're a fan of Doctor Who, this has been a big thing since back in the 70s. This is, messaging about political situations and like social situations and stuff. That is what Doctor Who has been about since the 70s. It's not changed. It's still the same show it was. It's just people have changed how they're looking at it. And it did get a lot of outrage over being woke and kind of pushing the boundaries too much. Now, I do think in some of the episodes, especially in that last season and in some of the anniversary special, it was pushing stuff which I don't think the audience was really ready for. And there was a backlash. And some of it went a little bit too far, I think, in that it alienated viewers, and I think they do have to pull back. But I think we're seeing that across all studios, where they're all trying to work out like what the audience likes and what the audience doesn't like. But Doctor Who has always been a progressive show, always has been, and always will be. Now, there has been a lot of sort of question marks over the future of Doctor Who with Disney, now whether or not they will continue their deal. Now, I want to make this very, very, very clear. BBC owns Doctor Who. Disney just license it for Disney Plus internationally. If Disney pull out of the deal, the BBC still own it. They are the owners of this franchise. Disney get all the blame for everything that goes wrong with this show. That seems to be the standard thing. I've seen that so much of like anything that's good about the show was the BBC, and anything that's bad is Disney. That's except for here in the UK, where most people don't realise it's on Disney Plus internationally, so therefore just blame the BBC for everything that's wrong with it. But nevertheless, if Disney pull out, the BBC will continue. Now, there's been some reports over the weekend on the Mirror. They were reporting like one of the aspects that might be a difference that should the BBC pull out, they actually can save some money because they wouldn't need to necessarily film it in 4K and do all the special effects, because that's a requirement of Disney Plus, not for BBC One. Now, I can kind of think that having 4K versions on BBC iPlayer is a good thing, but if that's a way of them knocking down the budget and it continues to show, fine, being in HD. Also, apparently the TARDIS set in Cardiff is still there. And this is a kind of the key thing with Doctor Who, is he has come and gone, and even she's come and gone on many different occasions over the last 60 plus years. The character has been resurrected, and apparently Ncuti Gatwa has filmed a death scene. Now, whether or not we see that next week, who knows? They might introduce a new one, or they might do it in the next episode. Who knows? But Ncuti Gatwa was never going to be long for the character. I think he's really good. I like the emotional aspects to it brings it. I think that's been working really nice. I've been really enjoying his second season. Seems to have kind of jumped into it, and I have enjoyed him much more in this season. But there's also a spin-off series as well that's going to be coming out next year on Disney Plus. So that one there is called The War Between the Land and the Sea, and that one there is all about the UNIT group, and so that one's going to be more based around humans, less with Doctor. So I don't think we are publicly going to hear of any kind of breakdown between Disney and the BBC until that show has been released on Disney Plus. Now, Doctor Who might not continue in 2026 in the way that we have seen it in the last few years. There's no Christmas special this year. I suspect that the show is probably, if Disney does pull out, they'll then kind of try and work on getting ready again for 2027. Maybe leave it a few years, bring back in a new Doctor, start again. And again, this is just a cycle. Hopefully, if Disney did pull out, maybe the BBC does get those rights back to be able to add those seasons to the previous ones. I always think it was never a good idea that Disney didn't acquire the previous seasons. I thought that would have been a good way of building up that audience. It's just a very strange one. I kind of feel like Doctor Who with Disney makes a lot of sense. It's nice having that new show. But again, from Disney's point of view, is it working? But they might also look at it and go, well, it's not costing us a huge amount to make it because the BBC are picking up most of the funds, and it's good family entertainment for Disney Plus. They could continue, but the kind of the silence about it and all the rest of it does seem rather interesting. According to a source that told the Mirror, Doctor Who is an expensive show to make, and with the effects budget taking up a significant part of the overall spend, so if Disney were to withdraw its funding, there would be a significant impact on production as some fans may think, as the TARDIS is still standing in Cardiff and all ready to go on new adventures. It's also been reported recently that Russell T Davies has already written the scripts for the next 3rd season and also for the 4th, and whether or not Disney stays, the expectation is that the show will continue. Yes, there will be a gap with the scripts are finalised, the episodes are filmed and the editing process takes place, but we'll be back. But the wait won't be forever, just a big pause. And I think that is the key thing here, is Doctor Who will continue regardless of Disney's involvement. And that's something I think people need to realise with Doctor. This is a very unique situation. Disney doesn't do these deals very often. You don't tend to see a lot of this stuff where they bring in an outside source. And there's a reason for that, is Disney likes to own the IP, they like to expand on it, they like to use it in theme parks, merchandise, video games, music, theme park, cruise lines, all kinds of stuff. So with Doctor Who, they've really not been able to kind of utilise any of that there. Plus also the reaction to the show has been rather negative in many ways online, and the ratings haven't really been good. So whether or not they might give it another go, that could be a possibility. I wouldn't be surprised if Disney turned around and goes, yeah, we'll continue sort of co-funding it, but we want to pay you less. We'll give you a bit less, and do it that way, kind of reduce a little bit of the funding, and that could be a way of doing it. But it's very hit and miss. And as I said, I am not expecting us to find out anything more about what's going to be happening with Doctor Who in the coming weeks ahead of the finale or around the finale. I'm not entirely sure if we're going to see a death scene and they introduce a new Doctor, because they could do this. They could do that and they could totally throw us off and we could have a brand new Doctor being introduced. Now, some people might be thinking, we've only just had 2 seasons of this new one. It's not time yet. Some Doctors have only had a season. It's not abnormal for this to happen. And again, it's the wonderful thing with these kind of characters. You kind of have to think a little bit like, like Warner Brothers with Batman or, Spider-Man, those kind of characters, where they just replace the actors and reboot it a few years later. Doctor Who is one of those franchises that has done it before. It will do it again. But I'd love to know your thoughts. Do you think Disney will continue its involvement with the BBC and Doctor Who, or do you think it's just going to revert back to BBC because it's just not been working for Disney? Would love to hear your thoughts on this in the comments below. Go check us out over at whatsondisneyplus.com. Like, follow and subscribe, and I shall see you guys soon. Laters.